Hey all, here are OS Reviews. I've always thought that ink displays are just a bit underrated and super cool type of technology. Of course, they're commonly found on Kindle e-readers for their paper-like affinity. In fact, when you're not really changing the pages, it's just displaying a static image, it consumes no power at all. Only when the particles are getting refreshed does it take up a little bit of juice, hence it's super power efficient. In addition, it's a rare type of display that doesn't have any backlight, and subsequently, the brighter it is around you, such as if you're using it in direct sunlight at a beach, for instance, the more visible it is. So really cool. And in the past couple of months, color e-ink screens finally started to become more popular and mainstream as the cost of production started to come down. Recently, in fact, we reviewed a Big Me 7-inch e-reader/tablet that focuses on a Kaleido 3 display that's capable of showing 3 types of color in addition to the regular black and white, and they can mix together to allow you to display comics as well as images in a more interesting, slightly more vibrant way. Well, today we're taking a look at another interesting e-ink type accessory. It's going to be a smartphone case, primarily designed for iPhones. They have a variety of different models that you can pick between, either for iPhone 12 all the way up to iPhone 15, including the Pro models as well, and they can be found for under 30 bucks, so not bad at all. And what's particularly interesting about this one here is it's also using a color e-ink panel. It doesn't have any rechargeable battery. In fact, it allows you to customize the image on the back if you're displaying a wallpaper, for instance, using just the NFC capabilities on the iPhone. And that's sufficient for, again, emitting and sending over a different image. Actually, this is not the first time that we have seen a smartphone case for the iPhone that has an e-ink panel. That actually belongs to the Oasis InkCase IV that came out many years back. That being said, the InkCase IV's display is not only much smaller, but this was using a rechargeable proprietary cable for power, so you had to remove the phone from the case every single time you wanted to charge the battery inside of the case, and it connects to the smartphone using Bluetooth, so it required more juice to operate, compared to, again, this one, which never needs to be charged, only requires NFC to operate. I think it's just a lot more practical, and actually one of the biggest reasons why I think the Oasis InkCase just was a bit of a flop, because many units started to have defective rechargeable batteries, essentially rendering them useless. So again, offering this NFC capability is a much smarter choice from the get-go. You can push over any kind of wallpaper, any photo that you like, and have it being displayed on the back, and of course change it whenever you feel like showing something different. So it's primarily for aesthetic reasons. So functions that you aren't able to do here would be use it for reading, which would have been cool to see, but that's probably not going to be feasible using just NFC. There's kind of a trade-off there, because every time you want to send over, let's say, a new page from a book, it's going to take a couple of seconds compared to a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection, which is faster, but again requires a rechargeable battery to operate instead. So kind of pros and cons. I'll also point out that the concept of having an e-ink screen on the back of your device is also one that's kind of derived from the Yoda phone from all those years back. This is a Android-powered smartphone, of course, which has a touch e-ink panel. It was black and white, as was the norm back then, and then you had a regular color screen on the front for watching back videos, gaming, things like that. But now it's providing you with a similar concept-ish to more popular iPhones at a fraction of the price. So taking a closer look inside here, there's just a quick user guide, and this will tell you a QR code that you can use to download the companion app on the phone. A closer look at the case itself, it has a matte texture on the rear, so there's very little glare, and again, just like other e-ink displays, it actually is incredibly visible the more light that you have around you. If you kind of are looking at it in a completely dark environment, it actually seems much softer, just like on a piece of paper or a novel in a book. That being said, there is no any front light, of course, built into this version, so it's only going to be visible, just like a sticker when there, again, is a lighting around you. There's a slight kind of lip to the camera section as well to prevent it from getting scratched up, and then you also have cutouts for the functions including the mute slider as well as the volume rockers that feel pretty tactile. These keys, in fact, are constructed out of metal on this particular version, so it still feels premium, and then there's a slight lip on the outside as well that prevents the phone's display from getting cracked if you're accidentally dropping it, raising it a little bit more. Additional cutouts on the side for a lanyard strap, as well as for the volume, lightning, charging, as well as the power port on the other side. So actually very slim, and compared to a standard case, you really can't tell that this thing is special. They've done a pretty good job of minimizing the kind of overall size that it takes up, because e-ink displays can be extremely slim and flexible as well. So as a result, not weighing any more than a standard TPU case. Here's also another comparison with, again, some of those other e-ink panels, looking at it side by side. Now that we have it out of the packaging, you can tell that the PPI might be a little bit more pixelated compared to a higher-end Kindle device, just to keep the cost a little bit lower, but has kind of a fun, retro, nostalgic vibe to it, almost like a Polaroid that's been sitting out in the sun. It's worth flagging that there are two versions of these cases floating around. The 4-color ink screen variant typically sells for a little bit more, but still comes down to under $30, versus a 3-color version of the same case usually sells for around $20 or so, so even lower cost. However, the colors, quote-unquote, are perhaps a little bit misleading compared to on, say, a Kaleido 3-powered e-reader, where the 3 colors are in addition to black and white, whereas on all of these cases, the number of colors are already counting the black and white. In other words, the 4 colors are actually black, white, aka standard e-ink monochrome, in addition to red and yellow. And then using those 4 shades, it's able to mix and then create other levels of colors that you see being displayed in the image. So it's not going to be quite as contrast rich as the Kaleido 3 powered e-readers, which have 3 real colors on top of black and white. It's really kind of a 5-color capability if we had to count it in this particular way. Which is why those color e-readers tend to look just a little bit better as well. They have cyan, aka blue, in addition to the red as well as yellow that's being shown here. But this is already better compared to the 3-color version, which is only going to show black, white, and red. And so using shades of red as well as mixed with black and white, it's displaying everything that you see on the case. So it's going to be even more, I guess, limited or muted in terms of what you can display. But if you are creative in the types of images that you're showing, primarily with those 3 colors in mind, you can still get some decent looking results. But again, the 4-color variant, I would say, is probably worth a few dollars extra, just to give you slightly more customization choices in the types of images that you can show and still look a little better. Here's an example as well of the 4-color effect versus 3-color, again only having the reds visible in this instance of a parrot, since there are more shades and colors going on. Now this is probably still an ad rendered image because it's a little bit too saturated versus reality, but nonetheless you get the idea. It still should provide you with some of the yellows that wouldn't be visible otherwise in the 3-color version of the same case. You can even have it display a barcode, something like a plane ticket or a train ticket if you're trying to get onto a bus, for instance, and that can be another neat application. It's really just for reading that you can't use this panel, and it's not touch sensitive. There are both black and white versions of the case if you want a slightly different look there on the rear, and I think the black version maybe blends in a little bit more with the display, as you can tell there, versus the white has more of an obvious window to it. That being said, they both look pretty clean at the end of the day. Alright, so taking a closer look at that aforementioned Ink Zone companion app, so opening it up, you have to make sure that NFC is turned on. They seem to also produce a Bluetooth version, just like the Oasis InkCase, but like we talked about, I personally wouldn't recommend that version because it seems like the batteries inside of these things can degrade since they're so small at the end of the day, and once the battery completely dies, you're really no longer able to use it at all for the Bluetooth version. So the NFC being a batteryless variant, I do think is good for longevity's sake. And down below here, you can create your own drawing, again using AI. That's one of the prominent tiles. Futuristic city with technology, something like that. It will take a couple of seconds. Again, you can always just do this using regular ChatGPT or even Microsoft Bing, and then save those images in your gallery to push over, but they just integrated that function directly in the app. And here it's created a result for us that it's also, I think, mostly using the shades of colors that it's capable of reproducing. So we're able to also customize it by adding a text even. Here's a preview of more specifically what it'll look like on the case, which again is a little bit more kind of pixelated there, but still pretty interesting nonetheless. You can make out the primary details if you're holding it just a little bit further from your face, as long as you're not really pixel peeping. And you can also choose other color shades, including kind of a inverted color mode, as well as if you want only a monochrome black and white look, that can be done as well. You'll get a data transmission pop-up that says start to refresh the screen. And if we turn over the screen here on the back, you can tell that the transmission then is in progress. Again, all done using NFC. It will happen in gradual stages through multiple kind of flashing sequences until it's completed, as you can tell, almost like developing a dye sublimation printer that kind of goes through the layers of colors one at a time. Definitely not as fast or instant as a kind of Bluetooth-powered refresh or just on a regular Kindle there, because again, it requires less power completely using that NFC chip, but still quite impressive that the finished result does look quite similar, I have to say, to the preview that we saw there from before, and some of the green colors here that are done using by mixing together the red as well as the yellow is actually quite convincing. The overall process taking around 20 seconds on average to finish a transfer, and again, functional enough. Now, otherwise on this app, you can also start a brand new creation, aka a blank canvas. You can play around with text, including the font size, even different font patterns, and the color that you want the font to be displayed in, black, white, red, or yellow. Let's just try something really simple in this particular test, and we'll tap on save. It will also be preserved so in the future you can more easily reference it, and then just go ahead and click on synchronize. Again, the data will be transferred over using NFC, and then the screen will then start to refresh. So there we have it. Again, the refresh is in progress, quite a bit of strobing and flashing there, but eventually it gets there. Right now it's an inverted result, and we are going to be more or less completed. It's also doing that to clear basically the residue from the prior image as well. So for things like text as well as barcodes, you can expect pretty good legibility. And by the way, this panel stretches 3.7 inches diagonally, and the technical resolution is 240 by 416. But again, using that, it's still able to create, I think, a pretty artistic looking result. Back to the menu, you can tap on More to just, again, find your favorited/saved creations, and you can also go into the theme tab in the middle to find images that other folks have created and shared. This will give you some pretty good inspiration. Some of these which are just a little bit more scenic and relaxing. Other ones here called landscape portrait also give you an example of what a face would look like there on the back. Full creation are more artistic looking results, it seems, and then two-dimensional are also kind of cartoon-like characters that you can also find as some of the examples. So let's actually try this out. I'm going to push over kind of this landscape photo. Takes a second there to render, and if I'm satisfied, I can then tap on transmit. So this is a slightly more complex image, but the transmission process actually is going to be the same in terms of time, just because the pixels still have to refresh and kind of erase what's on the existing side. So it's not like it has to take longer necessarily for a larger image to be transferred over. It's still going to be around 20 seconds or so until it finishes the completed result. So we see the autumn leaves there become visible, and again, looking actually quite decent. And here's a quick montage of a couple of other examples of cartoon characters, for instance, what it will look like. And images that really show off the reds and yellows, I would say, have the strongest impact from a color perspective. It actually looks really nice, as you can tell there. And in the final Me Profile tab, you're also able to view your own creations as well as any saved files inside of your account based on other images that you've liked. And you can also download even more fonts if you're trying to enter text, that is. There are a couple of different examples that you can find that will change the way that, again, those characters will look like. So there we have it, just a very quick hands-on review of the InkCase series of color e-ink cases for the iPhone, and overall, again, a pretty neat accessory. I think just makes it easier for you to customize the way that your phone case looks just by displaying different images that you can rotate, and again, actually working a lot better than I expected. Again, the display tech, great to see that e-ink is now becoming more accessible in terms of cost, and actually is a pretty fun case, I have to say, when it comes to not only offering pretty good protection, still very slim and easy to carry with you, and also, again, protecting the camera as well as the screen from getting scratched, but now with this panel here on the rear, and a pretty neat accessory. You can learn more details if you're interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the iPhone e-ink cases.